Welcome to the King's Court, the online radio podcast of the Haunted Majestic Haunted Attraction. I'm horror writer Michael Nost, and I'll be your host tonight as we explore some of the off-season happenings aboard Haunted Majestic and look deeper into some of the topics of interest to haunters everywhere. We're going to bring this podcast to you every 6 weeks during the off-season, April 15th, June 1st, July 15th, and September 1st, as we prepare for the 2020 haunt season, which begins on Friday night, October 16th, and continues through the end of the month of October. We will keep you updated on new additions that are coming to Haunted Majestic for the 2020 season and talk to some of the special guests who are scheduled to attend this fall's haunt. So check back for each episode of the King's Court to stay in the know about everything Haunted Majestic. Tonight we're going to start off with an update from Jody Rife from the Paranormal Investigation Team about how his ghost hunting group has been able to involve the public in finding out who or what resides aboard the old World War II hospital barges that we know as Haunted Majestic. Jody, welcome to the King's Court.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Now, tell us a little bit about PIT and the kinds of services your group provides.
Okay, well, our group PIT stands simply for Paranormal Investigation Team. We didn't think too hard on it. But we do have a kind of a nifty logo. Our primary function, starting out and still is, we perform home investigations, and we actually have a metaphysics group or metaphysics department that once we get the hard data in, they actually customize a home cleansing, and they actually counsel the client on what to do after we leave. So we do provide a service to the community, and we try to comfort people the best we can with a science that, at best, most real science, quote unquote, scoffs at.
So tell me, what drew you to Haunted Majestic, and what have you been able to find aboard the barges?
Okay, well, we were invited to investigate by the owner, Danny, and it really sparked our interest because we're located along the Ohio River. We noted that the closer we got to the river, the more paranormal activity seemed to spark. There's even one entity that seems to go up and down the river invading homes, which that's a whole nother story there. And so we agreed to start performing investigations upon the Majestic. We've been on board about 4 times, and each time we've had a very different experience on the Majestic itself. We've had the entities the first night actually didn't want us to leave. You know how you see in a lot of shows you get the EVP or over the Frank's box, leave now and all that? Every time we try to close a session, we would get a response like, don't go, don't leave.
Wow.
It was kind of offsetting. We were used to entities not wanting us there, and in this case, our first few times investigating, the entities didn't want us to leave.
Huh.
So it's definitely intriguing, and of course, we've been doing spaced out hunts, trying to gather more data, because our database with, as far as the paranormal goes, is still pretty slim. There's been reports of hearing laughter, singing, and we try to rule out, also every time we think we hear something like that, we instantly go to the edge of the barge to look along the river. I grew up along the river, so I know people on boats, voices carry pretty far on the river. And we even have a set of binoculars just in case to see if we can see anything at that time. And so far, not. It's been a clear river.
Well, let me ask you this. After everything that you've said about the investigation and so forth, we get this question all the time. Is the Haunted Majestic really haunted? So what do you say about that?
In my opinion and the team's opinion, a definite yes. In fact, one of the more convincing pieces of data we got. Now, this is your classic fisherman tale, unfortunately, because we were doing the Halloween after hunt, and most of our recording devices that night went dead. Batteries were being zapped, and me and a fellow team member who was conducting the tours, after the last group left, we decided to take advantage of it, kind of went back on board, and started setting up Frank's Box sessions just to see what was going on. And the entities on board, the one that we talked to, actually gave us data that this seemed pretty strong, so we handwritten it down. And we were able to confirm a lot of that through some research. The only problem we ran into was we think the entity was using its nickname, like how military members will give themselves nicknames.
Yeah.
And this nickname, Tusk, which I've heard several times when I was a cadet for guys. He claimed his rank was captain. He quoted a relatively low date of August 1966, just August 66, and he was part of the 4th Airborne. We actually looked that up, and they did suffer severe casualties and were even medevac out to a hospital barge. It didn't specify the barge, but that's a very compelling piece of data. Unfortunately, we had no recording devices that were operable that night. And the entity seemed to act like it didn't believe it was hearing us, like we were the paranormal occurrence. Pretty interesting night. It was like around about 2:30, 3 o'clock that night. Definitely something is going on there. Are these barges creating a low EM field that's allowing contact through time, which is one popular theory for ghosts and paranormal, or its hulls are pure iron and steel. We are still building lines of thoughts of what's going on. The Majestic's been docked there for a little over a year now, so not a whole lot of time to build from that. And other places, like you can go to a hospital or Moundsville, where they have groups going in and out constantly and giving data.
So let me ask you this. Now, I hear that your group and Haunted Majestic are actually teaming up to offer public ghost hunts again on July 4th. Tell us a little bit about that. What can folks expect?
Well, our tours are set up to be 90 minutes long, and we want people to actually experience and explore on themselves. So what we do is we take them around for the first 30 minutes, show them some of the spots that we detected data and caught EVPs and so on. And then for the remaining time, which is usually about an hour, we let them explore and do their own thing. We just ask that they be respectful and quiet for other groups that are trying to do their thing. And while they're doing that, our team is actually setting up experiments, like blind boxing or setting up areas where we isolate someone by themselves and record it. So in a way, we let them, our guests, participate in some of our experiments. So we can say, look, you didn't know what we were going to do, and this is what we're getting, and it's consistent with the other groups. So first part of the experiment is you have controlled groups. And if it makes it sound like we're using our guests as lab rats, but they enjoy it, and it helps confirms that we're not trying to do a Barnum and Bailey thing. There is real paranormal going on, and they're seeing it for themselves.
Well, that's really cool, and look forward to meeting you this year. And Jody, thanks for being on the show with us tonight.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Listeners, you can find out more about the paranormal investigation team's public ghost hunts aboard Haunted Majestic by logging on to the Haunt's website at www.hauntedmajestic.com or following Haunted Majestic and the Paranormal Investigation Team on Facebook. Well, our next guest on the King's Court is the owner of Haunted Majestic, Dana Toms. Dana, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be with you today. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, tell us, in your opinion, what is the biggest change that visitors to Haunted Majestic are going to be able to see in 2020 over last year's haunt?
Well, the first thing I think they're going to notice right off the bat is just the volume of the haunt. Last year, being our first year, we spent so much time getting the infrastructure built, getting the pavilion and the ticket booth and the fencing and the barges mounted, all that type stuff, that we did not have as much time as what we'd like to put into the actual haunted trail and the actual haunted rooms themselves. This year, we've had a full year to work on props and to bring in some outdoor props. And, it's going to be a complete new experience when people come in the gate. And right off the bat, they're going to notice just the sheer volume is going to be much, much more than what it was.
Now, one improvement that I know many followers will be really happy to see this fall is online ticketing. So tell us a little bit about that new addition.
We had so many calls from people or emails or texts that would say, hey, can we buy our tickets online, or do we have to stand in line at the gate and buy them? And last year, we just didn't have the technology up at that point to do them online. But this year, we are completely available online. You can go on our website, hauntedmajestic.com, click on the day or the type of ticket you'd like to buy, and you can buy a ticket right there online for any of the events that we have throughout the year. And then when you come to the haunt, basically you just go to the online ticketing window, which is a much quicker line. Show them your phone with the QR code, or you can print out your actual ticket from your printer at home. And it's going to avoid basically having to wait in line to get into the facility. So we think it's going to be a great thing. And another advantage of that is if the night that you planned on coming is going to be cold or going to be rainy or something comes up personally, then you can use your ticket another night. It is good for the entire season, just, obviously one use, but it's not required that you come a certain day or a certain time. So that's going to be a neat new feature that I think people will like.
Oh, that's fantastic. What other additions can people look forward to in October?
Well, we're going to have, as usual, special guests that are going to be coming to the Haunted Majestic, but we're going to be adding a paintball experience this fall.
Really?
That was another request, as people said, hey, there's some other haunts throughout the region that have done that in the past. Would you guys consider that? So we've actually got about a 1 mile wooded area, and we purchased the paintball setup from the Smoky Mountain Paintball in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So we will actually have military trucks that you can climb on the back, and you'll have your own 68 caliber paintball gun. And we're going to go out through the woods and actually shoot at moving targets and shoot at zombies and shoot at lots of things. So that will be a $15 add-on option if people want to do that. But it is going to be a complete experience. And I think that's, we're real excited about adding that to it this year.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. And you mentioned guests, so that's another thing that makes Haunted Majestic stand out is that inclusion of special guests each night of the haunt as part of the admission fee. So who can we look forward to seeing this year?
We've got a lot. It's early in the year, obviously, but we've already got a bunch of people already booked. And one that is really cool is the Green Goblin Head, which was from Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive movie, which I think you'll be hearing from him here later on in the show. He's going to be with us in early October. And we're going to do theme weekends. We're going to have a movie monster weekend the first weekend, and it'll focus on guests that are related to the movie monster industry. We're going to have John Russo with us, who was actually the creator of the zombie fad, who wrote the screenplay for the Night of the Living Dead movie back in the 1960s. We're going to have a horror authors weekend. It'll be packed full of horror authors. And then we're going to have a Weekend of the Dead, which is going to be people that are either have appeared in zombie movies or been on the Walking Dead TV show or things like that. So, we're still working in the booking stages for a lot of that. But if you check our website at hauntedmajestic.com, we do list those as we book them. And there's already quite a few on there.
That sounds great. Hey, Dana, as always, thank you for updating everyone on what we can look forward to this fall at Haunted Majestic.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, tonight we will talk with the restorer of one of the most iconic pieces of horror movie memorabilia in the country, in the world, really. If you are a Stephen King fan or just a fan of classic horror in general, then you have to remember the Green Goblin head from the 1980s classic Maximum Overdrive. Tim Shockey, the owner and restorer of this historic piece of movie history, is with us tonight to tell us a little about that iconic goblin that graced the front of the Happy Toys semi-truck in the movie. Tim, welcome aboard the King's Court.
Thank you.
Now, tell us a little bit about how the Green Goblin head and you first really crossed paths, and a little about that long process to bring it back from the dead, so to speak.
Well, back in the 80s, I owned a small video store here in Pike County, Ohio. And I was a big movie buff, still am. All my family lived in Wilmington, North Carolina area where the Maximum Overdrive was made. One day, my brother called me up and he's like, hey, this guy down here has the Green Goblin head for sale off of the truck in Maximum Overdrive. I think it'd be cool if you got it for your video store. I'm like, well, heck yeah, So he gave me the guy's number and I called him up right then, and we talked about it. And I said, well, I'll see you tomorrow. So I grabbed a buddy of mine and we headed out about an hour or so later, drove all night. And the next day I met with the guy. And when I first saw it, my heart just dropped. I'm like, wow, this thing is totally destroyed. For some reason, I saw the movie, but for some reason, I was still seeing this big, awesome green head, And when I looked over at it, it was just a pile of rubbish. The jaw was gone, the tongue, the lower teeth, top of the ears, and it was all burnt. You could see a little bit of green here and there on it. And I'm like, wow, I still got to have this. This is a big piece of movie history. So we worked out a deal and loaded it up and headed back, and coming through the turnpike in West Virginia, oh my gosh, the truckers drove us crazy. One would pass us and get on the CB. It's like, hey guys, what is this thing? Is this from that movie Maximum Overdrive? Because it'd only been out like a year. We're like, yeah, we just kidding. So he would slow down and then move over, and the next truck would come in line and start tooting its horn, and it took us forever to get across the turnpike. So we was in a little Toyota 4-wheel drive pickup. This head was hanging over the sides of it. You couldn't help but notice it. So even in this destroyed state, people still knew what it was. So we got it back to the video store, and I didn't think about it not fitting through the front door. So at the side of my building, I have my sign shop in the one side of the building. So I put it in through that big garage door we had there. And then when customers come in, we talked about it, and then they'd come over and look at it, get their picture with it and all this. It was pretty cool. So early 90s, we sold the business and the building. And so we brought it home. It laid in the backyard for probably like 20 years or so. Dogs used it for a dog house. The kids played on it. I even come home from a job one day, and this guy backed up to the fence. And I'm like, can I help you? And he goes, well, I'm just loading up that head. And I said, well, who told you could have it? And he's like, she did. So I looked over and there was my wife, and I said, I don't think so, buddy. She hated it. She's just like, oh, that thing's evil. Blah, blah, blah. And I told her, I said, honey, I love you, but if I ever come home and this thing's gone, I'm sorry, you better be gone too. So we kind of had that understanding at that point. And so one day she came in, she's like, Tim, I'm sorry, but I ran into that goblin thing out there. And I'm like, what? She was cutting grass. So I went out and looked, and there laid the ear off of it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's when I brought it inside in the garage. And so I said a few years, and in the back of my mind, I kind of kept the idea that someday I wanted to restore it. And I'd even talked to a lot of people on forums and so on. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't want to do it. That'll ruin its value. And I'm like, it's just a pile of rubbish right now, I've got to do something with it. So when my youngest kid turned 18, I'm like, okay, it's time to do this. So I built me a perimeter in the garage out of plastic, so I keep all the dust down. And I started. And this was in 2011, early 2011. And so for the first 2 or 3 nights after work, my shop is right here. So I work, right next to it. So first 2 or 3 nights, I just would sit out there and stare at it. I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start, And so finally I started in just with some really rough grip paper, just trying to sand off all the heavy, thick crud that was on it where it had burnt. And March of 2013, I finished it up. And let me back up just a hair. So I was about halfway through it. And no, I wasn't even I was almost done with it. And I hadn't been on Facebook much. And a buddy of mine talking to me one night, and he's like, man, where have you been? I'm like, I've been working on a project. He goes, what kind of project? So I'm thinking, a goblin project. And so that's where the name The Goblin Project originated from, that I go by. And so I proceeded to tell him, hey, here's what I've been doing. He's like, no freaking way. And I'm like, yeah. Man, he was excited. He was like my best buddy then, And he's like, are you going to be at Horror Hound in Cincinnati? And I'm like, horror what? And he's like, Horror Hound, that's, and he proceeded to tell me what these Comic Cons and Horror Cons were all about. And I'm like, I've never heard of them. I was just restoring this to keep in the garage with my other 800 movie props. So I'm like, okay. So he told me who to contact, and I sent the guy a message, and he flipped out. He's like, man, if you've got it done in time, you've got to be here. So March the 16th, I painted it, and that was on a Sunday, I believe. The following Friday, I was unloading this thing, or Thursday, I was unloading this thing in Cincinnati for Horror Hound.
And that was your first place that you actually went?
Yeah, it was like an hour and 20 minutes from the house here,
Wow.
And the guy didn't even really have room for me. There was a long hallway out front. He put me at the end of the hallway. And there was no one else right there by me. But when they came, 15, 20 foot away, there was someone. But anyway, people could still see me. And I think 2 or 3 days before I went, I posted a before and after picture on my Facebook. And oh my gosh, it went like 25,000 views, just boom. I'm like, wow, this is nuts. Oh, it was an unbelievable crowd that came there that day to see me. And I'm like, wow, this is great. And I thought to myself, this would almost be a sin to just tuck it away in the garage for myself. That's selfish.
Yeah.
Because there's so many fans.
And since that restoration, and since going to that first trip to Horror Hound, now you've been all across the country bringing the Green Goblin Head project to fans everywhere. So tell us about that since that first outing. I think my first year we did 16 shows, and it was just unreal. I was from Florida to Maine. In fact, Florida one weekend and Maine the next. Wow.
And I do these by myself. My kids, wife don't go with me. My wife into 2 of them. A couple of my kids and their spouses showed up at the first one on Sunday morning. It's like, okay, after an hour, we're going back. We're good. So, it's just me. And I think the worst part of it is having to put up with just me on these trips. I drive myself nuts. But anyway, we've been in Canada several times. In fact, we have 2 events scheduled there later this year if this virus gets out of the way. We've been all over, and the response is just unbelievable. Some events I do, there's people in lines, and I don't get a break for hours. It's I never get tired of sharing my story with them, and many of them tell me their stories. And everyone wants to get a picture with it. I have fans send me artwork and different really cool things that I take on tour with me and share with everybody. And it doesn't get old. I could do the same year, and it'd be just as much fun every year. It's the people that make this really exciting. The last couple of years have really increased. In 2018, Lionsgate sent a crew out here, and they shot a documentary on the restoration of this. And it came out on the new Blu-ray in October of 2018.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, it's in stores everywhere. If it's not sold out, you can get it on Amazon and so on. But it's like a 10-minute documentary called Goblin Resurrect Us. And it's nuts. I have people scheduled from Italy and Germany coming in. Last year, I had a guy 2 years ago, I had a guy and his girlfriend fly in England to see the thing.
Wow.
So it's just, it's really just crazy. I wouldn't trade this for any other cool thing I've done, other than, of course, having my kids. If I don't have dad, I'm dead meat. And getting married, of course. Got to always add that in, because I know for some reason somebody will hear this that shouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, other than my wife and kids, this is the coolest thing I've ever done.
That is incredible. Now on Saturday night, October 17th, 2020, I understand you and the Green Goblin Head will be at Haunted Majestic in Huntington, West Virginia.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking forward to it. We were there last year, supposed to be there for 2 nights. And Saturday night, I didn't make it. Friday, after I got everything loaded up, I had gout hit me pretty bad, and I couldn't even crawl to my truck hardly.
Ouch.
So yeah, I was not able to make it Saturday, and I felt really bad. And I'm tickled to death I have a chance to come back this year and see the fans on Saturday.
Well, we look forward to seeing you. Tim, thanks for telling us about the Green Goblin Head's restoration, and we look forward to seeing you at Haunted Majestic this fall.
All right. Appreciate it, Mike.
Folks, you can see the Green Goblin Head in person on Saturday night, October 17th at the Haunted Majestic Haunted Attraction in Huntington, West Virginia from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. under the pavilion at the Haunt. A general admission ticket to the Haunt includes the opportunity to meet, greet, and photograph any of the Haunted Majestic's special guests. So check out the event's website at www.hauntedmajestic.com to see who is scheduled to appear and the dates and times they plan to be on site. Well, that about does it for our program tonight, but don't forget to follow all the happenings of Haunted Majestic online at www.hauntedmajestic.com or visit the event's Facebook or Instagram pages to stay up to date on all of the news related to the attraction. There are posts and updates several times a week, so check back early and often to stay in the know about everything related to the haunt industry. For King Majestic and his eerie court, I'm horror author Michael Nost, thanking you for spending some time with us tonight and inviting you back again when we air next on June 1st. Have a good night.